My parents didn't forget my daughter. That would have almost been easier to forgive. They talked about Ellis in the family group chat before leaving for Lake Norman. My sister asked, "What about Ellis?" My mother answered, "She'll be fine. She's quiet." Then they packed the SUV, took my sister's kids, and left my 6-year-old daughter alone with crackers, juice, and a note that said, "Be good." I didn't answer their excuses. I saved every screenshot, called the police, and let Grandma read the truth. What they didn't know was that Grandma had already been watching, and the house they thought was theirs was never theirs at all. Chapter 1. The Empty Seat in the SUV. My parents said there wasn't enough room in the SUV for my 6-year-old daughter. There was room for 3 suitcases, 2 coolers, a bag full of pool toys, a beach umbrella, a case of sparkling wine, my sister's children, my sister, her husband, and both of my parents. There just wasn't room for Ellis. When my mother said it, she didn't sound ashamed. She sounded inconvenienced, as if I had called to complain about a missing sweater instead of my child. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten her. I didn't post anything online or beg anyone to explain how a family could drive away from a house knowing a little girl was still inside it. I called the one person they had forgotten still mattered in that house. 3 days earlier, Ellis had been sitting on her bedroom floor in Asheville, packing her purple backpack like she was leaving for college instead of spending a few days at her grandparents' house in Briar Glen. She was 6, small for her age, with serious gray eyes and the careful hands of a child who had learned to ask before touching anything that might not be hers. She packed 2 stuffed animals, her sketchbook, a box of crayons, her purple pajamas, a sheet of star stickers, and the little flashlight shaped like a silver star that she kept beside her pillow every night. "Don't forget your book," I told her. She held it up proudly, the corners already worn soft from bedtime rereads. "Grandma said she might read 2 chapters if I'm good." That sentence should have bothered me more than it did. Ellis loved books, quiet corners, warm blankets, and drawing houses with yellow windows. She liked knowing where the exits were in restaurants and always asked whether we would come back before dark. She was gentle, not fragile, but people often mistook the first for the second. Or worse, they mistook quiet for easy. She zipped the backpack halfway, then looked up at me. "Grandma won't forget bedtime stories, right?" I smiled because that was what mothers do when their children hand them a small fear wrapped in an ordinary question. "Of course not, sweetheart. And if she does, you call me and I'll read to you over the phone." That made her smile, a little. My husband, Callum, stood in the doorway with our garment bag over one shoulder and his laptop case in his hand. At 39, he had the calm face of a man who could talk a panicked client out of tearing down a perfectly good wall. We ran Whitlock House Design, a small interior design studio that handled boutique hotels, restored homes, and the kind of clients who liked reclaimed wood until they saw the price of reclaimed wood. We were driving to Charlotte that afternoon for a hotel pitch we had been preparing for months. The timing lined up with what my mother still called Grandma Week, as if putting a cute name on something made it warm. Ellis had gone to my parents' house for a few days each summer since she was 4. Nothing terrible had happened before, nothing I could name in a police report, just small things. Ellis coming home quieter, Ellis saying Aiden got to pick the movie every night, Ellis saying Sophie cried if she didn't get the pink cup, so Ellis used the green one instead. I noticed, I always noticed, but I also knew the danger of letting your childhood become a pair of binoculars you used to inspect everyone else. I grew up in the Hartley family, where feelings were arranged for display, not examined. My mother, Vivian Hartley, used to call me responsible, independent, no trouble at all. When I was little, I thought those words meant I was good. It took me years to understand they meant convenient. My older sister, Nerissa, had never been convenient. She was important. She danced competitively from the time she was 6 until her late teens, and our house revolved around sequins, recital schedules, entry fees, sore ankles, and my mother's endless belief that Nerissa was born for a spotlight. My father, Graham, carried garment bags and nodded. My mother cried at every performance. I sat in the third row holding water bottles and learning not to need much. So, yes, I had doubts about leaving Ellis at Hartley House. But the previous summers had gone fine enough, and I told myself fine enough was not the same thing as danger. I told myself Ellis deserved cousins, grandparents, a yard bigger than ours, and memories that did not have my old fear stitched through them. Briar Glen was 95 minutes from Asheville, a pretty little North Carolina town with brick storefronts, church bells, and neighbors who knew whose hydrangeas were blooming late. Hartley House sat on a corner lot under 2 old maple trees, white columns out front, blue shutters, wide porch, the kind of place that made people say, "What a beautiful family home," before they knew anything about the family. My mother came out before I had even turned off the car. "There's my sweet girl," she said, opening her arms for Ellis. Vivian Hartley was 64 and never looked unprepared. Linen pants, gold hoops, smooth hair, soft perfume. She hugged Ellis like a photograph was being taken, one hand pressed gently to the back of her head, smile angled toward the driveway. My father stood behind her, 70 minus 3 and already fading into the background. Graham Hartley had spent his working life as an accountant and his marriage as a man who let my mother decide what reality was going to be. He smiled at Ellis and said, "Big week, huh, kiddo?" Out on the lawn, Nerissa was filming a video on her phone while trying to get her daughter Sophie to twirl. Nerissa was 38, still beautiful in the polished, hungry way that came from being praised too early and too often. She ran a lifestyle account that used words like intentional and rooted, while living rent-free in my parents' house with her husband Brett and their 2 children. Aiden was 9, loud and sunburned already. Sophie was 7, all pink sandals and dramatic sighs. Brett sat near the porch steps, scrolling his phone, a man with the confidence of someone who called himself a marketing consultant and the income pattern of someone who was mostly unemployed. Ellis stepped closer to my leg, clutching her backpack strap. "Go on," I said softly. "Your cousins are waiting." She walked toward the grass, careful at first, then faster when Sophie waved her over. My mother watched her and gave a pleased little sigh. "Ellis is so quiet," she said. "She won't be any trouble." There it was, the sentence people said when they meant they would not have to pay attention. Nerissa laughed from the lawn. "I wish mine were that easy." Brett looked up just long enough to add, "She's basically like a little adult." I felt something old move in my chest. Not anger exactly, recognition. I crouched in front of Ellis and tightened one strap on her backpack, even though it did not need tightening. "If you need anything, you call me, okay?" Ellis nodded. "Even for bedtime?" "Especially for bedtime." Before we left town, I texted my grandmother, Evelyn Hartley. "Ellis is at Mom's for Grandma Week." Her reply came almost immediately. "Call me if anything feels wrong." I stared at those words longer than necessary. Evelyn was 82, a retired elementary school teacher with sharp eyes, steady hands, and a way of hearing what people did not say. She lived 20 minutes from Hartley House in a small brick ranch full of books and old lesson plans. When I was a child and my parents forgot me for dance weekends, Evelyn was the one who showed up with soup, a deck of cards, and no questions that made me feel ashamed. She also still handled certain family paperwork herself, something my mother complained about whenever she forgot that patience was not the same thing as weakness. On the drive to Charlotte, Callum glanced at me from the passenger seat. "You're quiet." I kept my eyes on the road. "I'm fine." "Do you want to turn around?" For one foolish second, I pictured it, turning around, scooping Ellis back into the car, telling my mother plans had changed. But then I imagined Vivian's sigh, Nerissa's smirk, the familiar accusation that I was dramatic, controlling, too sensitive. "No," I said. "She'll be okay. She's been okay before." Callum did not argue. He just reached over and rested his hand on mine. That first night, I called after dinner. My mother answered on speaker. I could hear cartoons, running feet, someone laughing too loudly. "Say hi to Mommy," Vivian called. Ellis came on breathless and soft. "Hi, Mommy. We made cookies. I drew the backyard." "That sounds perfect," I said. "Did you save me one?" "Maybe," she said, and I could hear her smile. Then my mother's voice swept back in. "She's fine, Maren. Don't hover. Enjoy Charlotte." I swallowed the irritation because Ellis sounded okay. That was what mattered. The next afternoon, no one answered. I called my mother, nothing. My father, nothing. Nerissa, straight to voicemail. I texted each of them and watched the little delivered notices sit there unanswered. I told myself they were at the pool, or out for ice cream, or in a loud restaurant. I told myself every harmless explanation I could find because fear, once invited in, always brings its own furniture. By evening, Callum sat at the hotel desk reviewing our proposal, while I stood near the window with my phone in my hand. Charlotte glittered below us, all office lights and traffic, but I barely saw it. "Try again," he said. I was about to when Instagram refreshed. Nerissa's story appeared at the top of my screen. Lake Norton, blue water, white boat, gold sunlight. Her caption floated across the first image. "Finally, the whole family together." My thumb stopped moving. There was my mother in oversized sunglasses, my father holding a plastic cup, Nerissa with one arm around Sophie, Brett grinning beside Aiden, a cooler, beach bags, towels, a case of sparkling wine tucked near someone's foot. No Ellis. I tapped to the next photo. Everyone on the deck, wind in their hair, Sophie flashing peace signs, Aiden wearing a life jacket. No Ellis. Next photo, the kids near the rail, Aiden and Sophie both laughing. No purple backpack, no small gray-eyed girl, no silver star flashlight clipped to a zipper. I zoomed in until the image blurred. I searched corners, reflections, shadows, the cabin doorway. Maybe she was asleep inside. Maybe she hated the boat. Maybe she stayed back with Grandma Evelyn. But then I remembered Evelyn did not live at Hartley House. The room tilted quietly. I called my mother. No answer. I called again. This time she picked up, her voice bright and breezy, with water and laughter behind her. "Hi, honey, how's Charlotte?" "Where is Ellis?" A pause. Small, but enough. "At the house, sweetheart." My hand went cold around the phone. "Your house." "Yes," Vivian said, as if explaining something obvious. "We couldn't bring everyone. There wasn't enough room in the SUV." I looked at the photo still glowing on my screen. The coolers, the bags, the towels, the wine case, the smiling children who had been chosen. And then I understood. No space meant no priority. It meant no priority. I spoke very softly. "You left my 6-year-old alone." My mother sighed like I'd embarrassed her, and for the first time in my life, 95 minutes felt farther than I could survive. Chapter 2. The Lights She Left On. "Who is with her?" I asked. My mother made a small sound, the kind she used when a waiter brought the wrong salad dressing. "I told you, Maren, she's at the house." That was not what I asked. Who was with her? Another pause, shorter this time. "Mrs. Keller is across the street. I texted her to keep an eye on things." "Does Mrs. Keller know Ellis is inside?" The laughter behind my mother grew louder for a second, then muffled, like she had pressed the phone closer to her shoulder. "Don't be dramatic. Ellis is quiet. She knows where the snacks are." I heard Nerissa in the background, sharp and annoyed, saying Aiden and Sophie would have been devastated if we canceled. Then Brett, lower but clear enough, muttered, "It's not like she's a toddler." Something inside me went very still. Ellis had not been forgotten. She had been counted, discussed, measured against luggage and convenience, and left behind anyway. Callum was already on his feet. He had only heard my side of the call, but his face had gone pale in a way I had never seen before. He reached for his keys with one hand and his phone with the other. I hung up on my mother. For 1 second, the hotel room was too quiet. The floor plans folders were still spread across the desk. Callum's laptop still glowed with floor plans and fabric palettes. A half-empty paper cup of coffee sat near the window. Everything looked normal, which made it worse. "Call Briar Glen Police," I said. "Welfare check. Tell them a 6-year-old may be alone in the house." "Already doing it," he said. My hands shook when I called Evelyn. Not much, but enough that I hit the wrong contact first and had to back out. She answered on the second ring. "Maren?" "They left Ellis alone at Hartley House." I expected questions. I expected shock. I expected the kind of stunned silence that wastes time because the mind refuses to accept what the ears have heard. Evelyn gave me none of that. "Is the spare key still under the blue planter by the side door?" "I think so." "Does Ellis have a phone?" "No." "Do you know if the back door sticks the way it used to?" "Yes." "I'm going now," Evelyn said. "Stay on the line as long as you can." There was a rustling, then the sound of drawers opening, keys, a door closing. Her voice stayed calm, but not soft. It had an edge I remembered from childhood. The voice she used when a student lied badly or a grown man tried to talk over her at a school board meeting. Callum was speaking to someone at Briar Glen Police, giving the address, saying our daughter was 6, saying yes, a relative with a key was closer and on the way, saying yes, we still wanted an officer's scent if available. I threw clothes into our overnight bag without folding them. My body had moved ahead of my mind, packing, unplugging chargers, grabbing Ellis's little travel blanket from the chair because I had brought it in case she wanted it when we picked her up later in the week. Later in the week. The phrase almost made me sick. I called my mother again, voicemail. Nerissa texted me before I could call her. "Mom said Ellis is fine. You always make everything about you." Callum's phone buzzed a moment later. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening, then showed it to me. "Handle your wife before she ruins this." Brett. Callum did not answer. He took a screenshot, slipped the phone into his pocket, and zipped the bag. Evelyn stayed on the line as she drove. I could hear the faint click of her turn signal, the low hum of the road. Every few seconds I asked where she was. Every time she answered with a street name, steady and precise. When she pulled up to Hartley House, she did not speak for a moment. "Evelyn," I said. "All the lights are on." I pressed my free hand over my mouth. "I'm going in now." I heard her car door close, gravel under her shoes, the scrape of the planter, a key against the lock, then the groan of the side door opening. "Ellis?" Evelyn called, not too loud. "Honey, it's Grandma Evelyn." Nothing. My knees went weak. Evelyn moved through the house slowly. She narrated in short pieces, not for drama, but to keep me breathing. Kitchen light is on, crackers on the table, juice on the floor, a chair by the cabinet. Then her voice changed. "There's a note." "What note?" She was quiet for half a breath. "Be good. There's food in the fridge." Callum turned away, one hand braced against the wall. Evelyn kept walking. "Ellis? Sweetheart, it's me." For a few seconds there was only the sound of her footsteps. Then I heard something small, a broken intake of breath. "I found her," Evelyn said. The room dropped out from under me. Callum caught my elbow before I hit the carpet. "Is she hurt?" "I don't see blood. I don't see bruises. She's scared. Very scared." I heard rustling, Evelyn lowering herself, her voice gentler now. "Did Mommy send you?"
Ellis whispered. "Yes, baby, your mommy is coming." I bit my knuckles so I would not make a sound that would frighten my daughter through the phone. Evelyn said, "I'm staying with you until she gets here." Ellis said something I could barely hear. What did she say? Evelyn's voice was tight. She said she kept the lights on so the dark wouldn't come back. There are sentences that do not pass through you. They lodge somewhere and remain there, sharp, forever. Callum took the phone from my hand long enough to tell Evelyn we were leaving Charlotte immediately, that police had been called, that she should not clean anything up. I took the phone back and forced my voice to work.
Grandma, don't throw anything away. The note, the wrappers, anything. Take a few pictures if you can, just basic ones. And if officers come, tell them everything. Evidence? She said. Yes. Good, she replied. Then softer. I have her. Drive safely, but come. We drove through the night. Charlotte blurred into highway, highway into darkness, darkness into the kind of silence where every mile feels like an accusation. I sat in the passenger seat with my phone in my lap, watching the map count down too slowly. 95 minutes from Briar Glen had felt annoying before. Now, every minute felt like a locked door. At some point, I remembered being 8 years old in that same house, sitting cross-legged on the living room rug while the television played too loud. My parents had taken Narissa to a dance competition in Raleigh. I had been left with a sandwich in the fridge and instructions not to make a mess. I remembered pretending the voices on TV were company. Evelyn had arrived that night with chicken soup in a thermos. You shouldn't have had to be brave, she had told me. I had not understood her then. I understood her now. Evelyn called again while we were still 20 minutes out. Ellis was drinking water. Police had not arrived yet, but she had gone across the street to speak with Mrs. Keller while Ellis sat wrapped in a blanket by the kitchen table. Mrs. Keller didn't know, Evelyn said. What do you mean she didn't know? Vivian texted her this morning, asked her to keep an eye on the house while they were away. That's all. Nothing about Ellis being inside. Mrs. Keller thought the house was empty. Of course she did. Evelyn had asked permission to photograph the message. Mrs. Keller agreed, shaken and apologizing for something that was not her fault. She said she would tell the police exactly what she knew. By the time we reached Hartley House, the sky had begun to pale at the edges. The porch lights were still on, the downstairs windows glowed yellow. It looked less like a home than a place trying desperately to signal for help. Evelyn opened the door before I knocked. She wore the cardigan she always kept in her car, but it was not on her shoulders. It was wrapped around Ellis. My daughter sat on the sofa, knees tucked under her, hair tangled, cheeks blotchy, hands clamped around her star flashlight. For one terrible second, she only looked at me. She did not run. She stood, then stopped, like she was waiting to see if she had done something wrong. I dropped to my knees. Ellis? Then she came to me all at once. Mommy. I held her so tightly I could feel her heart hammering against mine. I'm here. I've got you. Her fingers twisted in my shirt. Was I bad? I pulled back just enough to see her face. No. Is that why they left me? No, sweetheart. Adults failed you. You did nothing wrong. Callum knelt beside us and wrapped both of us in his arms. He did not speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice broke on her name. Alice. She reached for him too, and he lifted her like she weighed nothing, like if he held her tightly enough, he could undo the hours she had spent waiting. I looked around over his shoulder. Every light in the room was on. The hallway, the stairwell, the kitchen. On the table lay the note in my mother's smooth handwriting. Beside it, Ellis's sketchbook sat open to a drawing of Hartley House. Every window colored yellow, a tiny person in one corner, and a large gray car driving away. That was when my phone rang. Mom. I let it ring once, twice, then I answered. Did you really send your grandmother over there like some kind of emergency? Vivian said. Not, Is Ellis okay? Not, I'm sorry. Not even, we made a mistake. I looked at my daughter curled against Callum's chest, already half asleep from exhaustion. Why didn't one adult stay with her? Vivian huffed. We had planned this for weeks. Aiden and Sophie would have been heartbroken if we canceled. And Ellis? You know how she is. She's easy. Nerissa's voice came from somewhere behind her. Ellis doesn't even like boats that much. I closed my eyes. We're filing a police report. My mother's voice sharpened. Don't you dare destroy this family over one mistake. I looked at the note, the lights, the drawing, my child's small hand still gripping that flashlight. You don't get to call my child your mistake. Then I hung up. Later, that morning, the three of us went to the Briar Glen police station. Ellis stayed with Evelyn's neighbor, Mrs. Keller, who refused to let us apologize and promised to keep cartoons on as long as Ellis wanted. At the station, Officer Daniel Ruiz listened without interrupting, his expression changing only once when I handed him the note. Callum provided the screenshots. I gave him the photos from Nerissa's story, the call logs, my mother's texts, Brett's message, Evelyn's pictures from the kitchen, and the photo of Mrs. Keller's message. Evelyn gave her statement in a voice so controlled it made the room colder. Officer Ruiz looked down at his notes. How long was she alone before Mrs. Hartley found her? About 10 or 11 hours, I said. And how long were they planning to be gone? 5 days, 4 nights. His pen stopped. For the first time since I walked into that station, no one spoke. Then he reached for an evidence sleeve and slid my mother's note inside. This will be documented as a child endangerment investigation, he said. I stared at the words through the plastic. Be good, there's food in the fridge. And I understood, finally, that this was no longer a family matter to be handled quietly in someone's kitchen.
Chapter 3. The Child They Called Easy. By the time we got Ellis back to Asheville, she had stopped crying, but that did not mean she was calm. She sat in the back seat with her knees pulled up under Evelyn's cardigan, both hands wrapped around the little star flashlight. Callum drove with both hands on the wheel, his knuckles pale. I sat beside Ellis because she would not let go of my sleeve. Every time the car passed under a dark stretch of road between streetlights, her fingers tightened. You're still here, Mommy? I'm still here. You're not going back to the hotel? No, baby, I'm not going anywhere. She nodded each time, but the question came back every few minutes, like fear had put itself on a loop inside her. At home, I tried to carry her upstairs to her room. She stiffened before we reached the landing. No, she whispered. I stopped immediately. Okay, we don't have to. Her eyes moved toward the living room sofa. Can I sleep there? On the sofa? That's where Grandma Evelyn found me. The words were so small I almost missed them. Callum looked at me from the bottom of the stairs. Neither of us argued. He brought down her pillow and the quilt from her bed. I made a little nest on the sofa while he plugged in a nightlight near the fireplace, then another one in the hallway. Ellis watched every movement, alert and silent, like she was memorizing the exits. When I tucked the quilt around her, something crinkled under the pillow. I lifted it and found a sleeve of crackers she must have taken from the kitchen. She looked ashamed. Just in case, she said. I set the crackers on the side table where she could see them. That's okay, I told her, but you don't have to worry about food here. Her eyes filled again. If the lights go off, will you still find me? I sat on the edge of the sofa and brushed her hair back from her forehead. Always. She wanted the hallway light on, then the kitchen light, then the small lamp by the window. By the time she finally slept, our house glowed like Hartley House had glowed, but this time every light felt like a promise instead of a warning. I sat on the floor beside the sofa until my back ached. Callum came in quietly and handed me a mug of tea I did not drink. "This is my fault," I said. He crouched beside me. "No. I knew something was wrong with them. I always knew. You trusted grandparents to do the bare minimum. That isn't negligence. What they did is." I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But guilt does not care much for logic. It moves into the spaces where love lives and starts rearranging the furniture. The next morning, Briar Glen Elementary called before 9. "This is Lena Brooks, Ellis's teacher," the woman said gently. "I know she said she might need a quiet day back, but I wanted to check in." My hand tightened around the phone. "Is she okay?" "She's safe. She's just not herself. She kept snacks in her backpack and asked twice if she could stay where she could see me. During art time, she drew the same house 3 times. All the windows were yellow." I closed my eyes. Lena lowered her voice. "I don't need details if you're not ready to share them, but we have a counselor who works with our younger students, Dr. Hannah Mercer. She's very good with children who've had a scare." "A scare?" I repeated, because it was such a small word for what had happened. "I'm sorry," Lena said. "I didn't mean to minimize it." "I know. Yes, please have Dr. Mercer call me." Hannah Mercer met with Ellis that afternoon in a small room off the school library where the chairs were low and the shelves were full of puppets, puzzles, and books about feelings with animals on the cover. She did not ask Ellis to tell the story. She asked about the drawing. Ellis sat with her knees pressed together, holding a yellow crayon. "Why are all the windows bright?" Hannah asked gently. Ellis stared at the paper. "I wanted the house to be loud," she said. "Loud?" Hannah tilted her head gently. "So I wouldn't hear nobody." I had to look away. Afterwards, Hannah walked me into the hall while Ellis picked out a sticker with Lena. "She may ask the same questions again and again. She may hide food. She may need lights on. She may seem fine, then panic over something small, a door closing, a suitcase, a missed phone call. That's normal after abandonment fear." The word abandonment landed hard because it was accurate. "She asked if she was bad." Hannah's face softened. "Children often make themselves the reason. It feels safer than believing adults failed them. Keep telling her the truth. She did nothing wrong, and for now, no unsupervised contact with the people involved." I almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That won't be a problem." It became official later that day when Karen Lou from CPS called. Her voice was calm, professional, and careful in the way people sound when they know every word may matter. "We've received the report from Briar Glen Police," she said. "I'd like to speak to you about a temporary safety plan for Ellis." She asked questions that made my stomach hurt. How long Ellis was alone? Did she have access to a phone? Did she know how to call 911? Were there food she could safely reach? Were there weapons, medications, unlocked exterior doors, stairs, appliances? I answered it all. Karen did not sound shocked, but she did sound grave. "Given the circumstances, we'll be recommending no unsupervised contact between Ellis and Vivian Hartley, Graham Hartley, Nerissa Vale, and Brett Vale during the investigation." "Good," I said, too fast. "We'll also be doing a follow-up regarding the Vale household, since Mr. and Mrs. Vale were present for the decision and have minor children." I thought of Nerissa's perfect posts, her captions about gentle parenting and intentional family rhythms. Do what you need to do. While I was still on the phone with CPS, my mother started texting. "You humiliated us. You could have handled this privately. Your grandmother is too old for this stress." Not one message asked if Ellis had slept. Not one asked whether she had eaten breakfast. Not one asked whether she had stopped shaking.
Then Graham called Callum. I only heard Callum's side from the kitchen. "Yes, she's safe now." "No, Graham, that isn't the point." A pause. Then Callum's voice changed, low and flat. "Did you know Ellis was staying behind?" I looked up. Another pause. Callum's jaw tightened. "You thought Vivian handled it." He ended the call without saying goodbye. "What did he say?" I asked. Callum set the phone down like it had something rotten on it. "He said your mother made a bad judgment call, but police were extreme. When I asked if he knew Ellis was staying behind, he said he thought Vivian handled it." Of course he did. My father's entire life could have fit inside that sentence. By evening, Nerissa had started posting. Not my name at first. That would come later. She began with vague sorrow, the kind designed to invite questions. "Some people use children as weapons when they've resented their family for years." Brett commented beneath it within minutes. "Elder abuse is real. Watch who suddenly gets close to Grandma when property is involved." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then the Briar Glen community group began buzzing. A cousin sent a question mark. A woman from my mother's church messaged me to say she hoped we could seek healing before permanent damage was done. Pastor Tom Avery wrote that family forgiveness should happen before public shame hardened everyone's hearts. I did not answer. Officer Ruiz had told me to preserve messages. Karen Liu had told me not to engage. And Rachel Monroe, Evelyn's estate lawyer, whom Evelyn had quietly asked to be looped in, texted 3 words: "Screenshot everything. Respond nowhere." So I did. Then the damage reached work. Maren Whitlock, the client behind the Charlotte Hotel pitch, called just before dinner. Her voice was apologetic but careful. "Maren, I hate to do this, but I think we need to pause the contract until things settle. There's chatter locally, and the ownership group is nervous about attaching the project to a family controversy." I stood in the downstairs bathroom with the door closed, one hand on the sink. "I understand," I said, because professional women learn to say that when what they mean is, "This is costing me something you cannot see." After I hung up, I gripped the sink until my fingers hurt. Callum found me there. "We may lose the contract," he said. "We can survive losing a contract. They're punishing us for telling the truth." He stepped closer. "They can take a pitch. They don't get to take our daughter." I nodded, but the floor still felt unsteady. The message from Bethany Hartley came at 9:17 that night. Bethany was my cousin from Ohio, a nurse, practical and allergic to drama. We exchanged Christmas cards and the occasional birthday text, nothing more. Her message was short. "I wasn't going to get involved, but you need to see this." Then came the screenshots. They were from the Hartley family group chat, dated the morning of the Lake Norton trip. Nerissa had written, "What about Ellis?" My mother answered, "She'll be fine. She's quiet. There's food." Brett wrote, "Not like she's a toddler." Then Nerissa again, "My kids will be devastated if we cancel." My father had added a thumbs up, a stupid little blue thumbs up. No one wrote, "I'll stay back." No one wrote, "We can take 2 cars." No one wrote, "She might be scared." They had remembered Ellis. They had considered her. Then they decided she mattered less. I sat down on the kitchen floor because my legs stopped working. Callum read over my shoulder and swore under his breath. I forwarded the screenshots to Officer Ruiz, Karen Liu, and Rachel Monroe. Officer Ruiz called 10 minutes later. "This changes the context," he said. "How?" "It makes it harder for anyone to claim confusion or poor communication. This suggests they knowingly left her." Knowingly. That word hurt more than alone.
The next day, I took Ellis to Evelyn's house because our own home felt too full of ringing phones and unsent replies. Evelyn made tea. Ellis sat at the dining table with crayons, drawing quietly. This time, the house on her page had yellow windows again, but there was a small figure outside the front door, too, holding what looked like a flashlight. "I should have known," I said. Evelyn set a cup in front of me. "You knew enough to call. That saved her." "I left her there." "You left her with grandparents who had a duty to protect her. They failed. You did not." I looked toward Ellis. "They called her easy." Evelyn's face changed. Not exactly anger, something older. "A quiet child is not a child who needs less love." The sentence settled over the room like a verdict. After a while, Evelyn sat across from me and folded her hands. "There's something you should know. I met with Rachel Monroe 3 months ago." I looked at her. "Your lawyer?" "Yes, about Hartley House." My chest tightened. She continued, voice even. "Nerissa and Brett have lived there too long without responsibility. Your mother treats that house like a stage. Your father signs whatever keeps the peace. I was already putting things in order." "What does that mean?" "It means I was hoping I wouldn't have to finish it." Ellis looked up from her drawing then, and Evelyn stopped. She smiled at my daughter and asked if the little figure outside the house was a superhero. Ellis shook her head. "That's Grandma Evelyn," she said. My phone rang before I could answer. "Mom." I stepped into the hallway and picked up. "You're going to regret making us look like criminals." I looked back through the doorway at Ellis, now leaning against Evelyn's arm while she colored. "You did that without my help." My mother's voice turned cold. "Then don't be surprised when people learn what kind of daughter you really are." The call ended. A notification appeared immediately. Nerissa had tagged half of Briar Glen in a long public post. There was an old photo of Evelyn at Thanksgiving, smiling beside a pie, looking all inch like the gentle grandmother people wanted her to be. The first line said my sister was heartbroken to watch me manipulate an 82-year-old woman over property. The word elder abuse appeared before the end of the second paragraph. I did not reply. I took a screenshot and sent it to Rachel.
Chapter 4. The house they thought was theirs. Rachel called me 3 minutes later. "Do not respond to your sister," she said. I wasn't going to. "I mean it, Maren, not one word, not publicly, not privately, not through a cousin who thinks she's helping. This is no longer just your family fighting online. They are accusing you of exploiting an elderly woman while there is an active child endangerment investigation." I looked through Evelyn's hallway into the dining room. Ellis was still at the table, her head bent over a drawing. Evelyn sat beside her, not hovering, just present. That was the difference between watching a child and performing care for an audience. "They're making it sound like this is about Hartley House," I said. "That's because they don't want it to be about Ellis." Rachel's voice was calm, but there was steel under it. "If anyone speaks, it should be Evelyn, and only if she chooses to. She's the one they're claiming is confused." "She's not confused." "I know, and I can prove it." By dinner, Nerissa's post had spread through half of Briar Glen. The local Facebook group picked it up first. Then women from my mother's church began commenting with careful little phrases that sounded gentle and landed like stones. "Praying for healing. Family matters should stay private. So sad when property comes between loved ones." Property. My 6-year-old had been left alone in a house for nearly 10 hours, and somehow my family had turned the story into a fight over property. My mother did not post much herself. Vivian had always preferred to let other people say the ugly thing while she stood nearby looking wounded. She wrote only one line under Nerissa's post. "We never imagined our own daughter would do this." Brett added another comment. Elder abuse can happen in any family. Watch the person who suddenly gets close to Grandma when there's a house involved. I read it twice, then set my phone face down before I threw it. Evelyn noticed. "They're talking about me," she said. I looked up. "Grandma, you don't have to deal with this tonight. I have been dealing with your mother for 64 years. Facebook is not going to finish me." There was no humor in her voice, but I almost smiled anyway. The next morning, Evelyn and I drove to Rachel Monroe's office in downtown Asheville. Callum stayed home with Ellis, who woke up asking if we were all still in the house. Before I left, she touched my sleeve and asked if I would come back before dark. "I'll be back before lunch," I told her. She studied my face, deciding whether to trust the promise. "Grandma Evelyn too?" Yes, Grandma Evelyn too. Only then did she let go. Rachel's office was on the second floor of a restored brick building, all tall windows and quiet carpets. She had represented Evelyn for years, mostly estate planning, medical directives, the kind of paperwork families pretend does not matter until suddenly it matters more than anything. She greeted Evelyn first, not me. "Are you certain you want Maren in the room for this?" Evelyn sat straight in the chair beside me. Yes, I should have told her sooner. Rachel opened a folder, then paused. "I'll keep this simple. Hartley House is not owned by Vivian, Graham, Narissa, or Brett. It hasn't been since your grandfather died. The house is held in the Hartley Revocable Living Trust. Evelyn is the trustee. She controls the trust while she is living and competent." I stared at the folder. "My mother always said the house would stay with her." "Your mother was allowed to live there," Rachel said. "That is not the same as owning it." Evelyn's hands rested on the handle of her purse. "I let them believe comfort was ownership," she said quietly. "That was my mistake." Rachel continued. "Vivian and Graham were named as future beneficiaries in an older version. Narissa was not an owner. Brett certainly wasn't. Evelyn first contacted me 3 months ago to discuss changes." I turned to my grandmother. 3 months ago? She did not look away. "Narissa and Brett had stopped pretending they were temporary. Your mother treated the house like a stage set. Your father signed whatever kept her quiet. And I kept asking myself what exactly I was rewarding." Rachel slid a document toward me, not for my signature, just so I could see the heading. She underwent a standard capacity review with my notes. Everything was notarized. There is no question in my professional opinion that Evelyn understood and understands what she is doing. My throat tightened. "Grandma, I didn't ask for any of this." "I know. I don't want people thinking I did." Evelyn turned to me then, her face tired but certain. "A house that isn't safe for a child isn't a home, Maren. It's just walls." Rachel explained the amendment in plain terms. Evelyn had changed the primary beneficiary to me with specific instructions that any financial benefit connected to Hartley House first protect her own care and then help support Ellis's therapy, education, and long-term security. It was not a windfall. It was not revenge dressed in paperwork. It was a boundary, written in legal language. Then Rachel took out another set of papers. "This is the notice to vacate, 30 days. If they do not leave voluntarily, the trust can proceed through the proper eviction process under North Carolina law. No one is being thrown on the lawn tonight, but the clock begins when they are served." For the first time since I saw the boat photos, I felt something inside the panic settle into shape. Not peace, structure. Vivian called Evelyn before the notices were even served. Rachel let it go to voicemail, but Evelyn shook her head and answered. My mother's voice came through sharp with tears. "Mother, how could you do this to me?" Evelyn closed her eyes for a brief second. "Did you choose Ellis when you drove away? That is not fair. Answer me." "She wasn't hurt." My grandmother's voice dropped. A child does not have to bleed for adults to be guilty. There was a silence long enough to feel like a door closing. Then Vivian said, "Maren has poisoned you." "No," Evelyn said. "You just mistook my patience for permission." She ended the call. That afternoon, Graham showed up at Evelyn's house while I was there. He looked smaller than he had 2 days earlier, shoulders rounded, eyes red, holding his cap in both hands like a man arriving at a funeral. "Evelyn," he said, "the kids don't have anywhere lined up. Aiden and Sophie are confused. This is going to hurt them." Evelyn stood in the doorway, blocking him from coming in. "Did you think about Ellis being hurt when you sat in that SUV?" His mouth tightened. "Vivian told me she handled it." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. "That sentence has been your whole life, Graham." He flinched as if she had slapped him. Meanwhile, CPS had visited Nerissa and Brett. Karen Liu kept her update brief when she called me, professional as always, but one detail slipped through because it mattered. During a conversation in the living room, Aiden had said, with the innocence of a child repeating adult language, that Mom said Ellis didn't fit. Nerissa reacted by posting again. This time, she used a photo of Aiden and Sophie sitting near cardboard boxes in the Hartley House living room. Sophie's eyes were red. Aiden looked embarrassed. The caption said her children were being traumatized because one bitter relative wanted to punish an entire family. She still did not mention Ellis. Not once. The child left alone in the house had disappeared from the story again. That was when Evelyn asked for her laptop. "Grandma," I said carefully, "you don't have to respond." "I'm not responding," she said. "I'm correcting." She sat at her kitchen table, glasses low on her nose, and typed with 2 fingers. It took her nearly 20 minutes. She deleted more than she kept. When she was done, she turned the screen toward me. The post was short. It said she was 82 years old, not confused, not manipulated, and not afraid of her own decisions. It said no one had pressured her to change her trust. It said she changed it because her daughter, son-in-law, granddaughter, and granddaughter's husband left a 6-year-old child in Hartley House while they went on vacation. It said they left a note telling that child to be good and find food in the fridge. The last line was the one that made my eyes sting. "If anyone wants to talk about elder abuse, do not use me to hide child abandonment." Evelyn clicked post. The silence after that felt different. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then everything did. Colleen Price, who owned the bakery near Briar Glen Elementary and had once made every birthday cake Nerissa posted online, commented first. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I believed half a story. Child safety comes first." Then a parent from Ellis's school shared it. Then another. Then one of Evelyn's former students, now a county clerk, wrote that Mrs. Hartley had been the sharpest woman in every room since 1989, and nobody should mistake age for weakness. Pastor Tom Avery called me before sunset. "Maren," he said, voice heavy, "I owe you an apology. I spoke about forgiveness before I understood the harm. I was too tired to be gracious. People always want the person bleeding to forgive quickly. It makes everyone else more comfortable." He was quiet. "You're right," he said. Mara Whitcomb emailed next. The subject line was simply apology. She said she had paused the hotel project based on incomplete information, and if I was still willing, the ownership group wanted to resume when I was ready. I read the email twice, then closed it without answering, not because I was angry exactly, because for once I wanted to decide on my own time. Nerissa locked her lifestyle account that night after one of her small sponsors commented that family values did not include leaving children behind.
Brett tried arguing under Evelyn's post until someone asked the question no one in my family could answer. If there wasn't enough room, why didn't one adult stay home with Ellis? Brett stopped replying after that. The next morning, Officer Ruiz called. With the group chat, Mrs. Keller's statement, the note, and the condition your daughter was found in, we have a clearer picture. What happens now? There will likely be interviews. Given that Ellis was found the same day and had no physical injuries, the county may pursue a plea agreement rather than jail time. But child endangerment can still be documented. Probation, fines, mandatory parenting or grandparenting safety classes, and no unsupervised contact are all possible outcomes. I did not feel triumphant. I felt my shoulders drop for the first time in days. So she'll be protected. That is the goal, he said. An hour later, Rachel texted, "Notice to vacate has been served. 30 days starts today." Before I could answer, another email from Officer Ruiz appeared, asking Vivian, Graham, Nerissa, and Brett to come in for formal interviews. Then my mother called. I almost let it ring out, but Ellis was asleep on the sofa, one hand resting beside the little nightlight, and I wanted my mother to hear what my voice sounded like when I was no longer afraid of disappointing her. I answered, "You got what you always wanted," Vivian said. "No sweetness now, no wounded mother performance, just rage. You finally took my family from me." I looked at Ellis. Her face was relaxed in sleep, but the flashlight still lay tucked near her hand. "No," I said, "I protected mine." I ended the call and set the phone on the table. My hand did not shake. For the first time in my life, I did not need the Hartleys to understand me in order to know I was right.
The 30 days that followed were not satisfying in the way people imagine revenge should be. There was no dramatic scene of me standing on the porch while my mother carried boxes past me, no shouting in the driveway, no final speech while neighbors watched from behind curtains. I did not go to Hartley House to watch them leave because that would have made it about me, and it had never been about me. Rachel handled the notices. Evelyn received the updates. I stayed in Asheville with Ellis. Still, news traveled. Vivian told anyone who would listen that she was giving me time to calm down, as if a legal notice from a trust attorney were a motherly gesture. Graham packed boxes in silence. Nerissa posted one last picture of Aiden and Sophie sitting on the living room rug beside a stack of moving bins, then deleted the comments when people started asking where Ellis had been sitting while they were all on the boat. Brett spent 2 weeks trying to find a rental that matched the life he liked to describe online and the income he actually had on paper. I felt sorry for Aiden and Sophie sometimes, not because their parents were being held accountable, but because they were children too, dragged through consequences they had not created. They had been raised inside the machine that had raised Nerissa to believe her discomfort mattered more than someone else's safety. Evelyn did not celebrate either. One morning, while Ellis colored at her kitchen table, Evelyn poured coffee and said, "Justice doesn't always feel good." I looked at her. She stirred cream into her cup, slow and precise. Sometimes it just feels necessary. That was exactly what it felt like. The legal part settled in a way that made sense, even if it did not feel large enough for what my heart wanted. Vivian, Graham, Nerissa, and Brett did not go to jail. Officer Ruiz had warned me that might happen. Ellis had been found the same day. She had not been physically injured. It was their first official child endangerment case. But calling it a mistake did not erase the record. They accepted a plea agreement, probation, fines,
mandatory parenting and grandparenting safety classes, no unsupervised contact with Ellis. CPS kept a file open involving Nerissa and Brett because Aiden and Sophie lived in that household, and Karen Liu made it clear that cooperation was not optional. Vivian, who once posted pictures of herself reading to grandchildren under captions about legacy and love, now had to sit in a safety class while an instructor explained that 6-year-olds could not be left alone for days with snacks and a note. Graham could no longer say he did not know because the group chat said otherwise. Nerissa lost the small home goods sponsor she had been so proud of. Their email was brief, professional, and brutal. Their brand could not be connected to a family safety controversy. Brett, who had typed #elder abuse like a man throwing gasoline, found himself answering CPS questions about his own judgment. It was not cinematic. It was better than cinematic. It was real enough to stick. On the day they left Hartley House, I stayed home. Ellis had a therapy appointment with Dr. Hannah Mercer that afternoon, and I chose that over any performance my mother might have been hoping to stage. Evelyn went with Rachel. Later, she told me Vivian waited near the front door with the keys in her hand, dressed too nicely for moving day, as if she expected cameras. When she saw Evelyn instead of me, her face changed. "You chose her over me?" Vivian said. Evelyn held out her hand for the keys. "I chose the child you left behind." That was all. No argument, no raised voice, just the keys landing in Evelyn's palm. When the house was empty, I drove there with Evelyn. The late afternoon sun came through the windows in long gold stripes. Without Nerissa's ring lights, Sophie's toys, Brett's boxes, my mother's arranged flowers, and my father's silent presence, Hartley House felt strangely hollow, not peaceful, just exposed. I walked into the living room and stopped behind the sofa. That was where Evelyn had found Ellis. For a moment, I saw it again. My daughter crouched small behind the furniture, holding a flashlight, believing she had to be good enough to be found. Evelyn stood beside me. "What do you want to do with it?" "The house?" She nodded. I looked around at the walls that had held birthday photos, dance trophies, Thanksgiving dinners, whispered resentments, and one terrified little girl. Once, I might have wanted the house because being given something from that family would have felt like proof that I mattered. Now, I knew better. "I don't want it to be a trophy," I said. "It isn't. I want you taken care of first, properly, no arguments, no guilt. And whatever comes from the trust after that, I want part of it set aside for Ellis, therapy, school, whatever helps her feel safe and build a life that doesn't depend on begging people to choose her." Evelyn's eyes softened. "That can be done." I touched the back of the sofa, then let my hand fall. And maybe one day, when it doesn't feel like this anymore, it can become something useful, a rental for a family that actually needs a home, or we sell it. I don't know yet. "You don't have to know today," Evelyn said. That was another gift my family had rarely given me: time. Whitlock house design did not magically recover overnight. Real life does not move that cleanly. Maren Whitlock did send an apology and asked to resume the boutique hotel project when I was ready. I waited 3 days before answering because I wanted the decision to be mine, not a reflex of gratitude. We eventually took the project back with a revised timeline and clearer boundaries.
Other clients came slowly. A few local people wrote notes saying they respected what we had done. One woman hired us to redesign her guest house and said, quietly, that she had gone no contact with her own parents years earlier and knew what it cost to be called cruel for choosing safety. I kept that note in my desk drawer. Ellis kept seeing Dr. Hannah Mercer. Healing did not look like a movie montage. She still flinched when a suitcase rolled across the floor. She still asked before every errand whether everyone was coming back. For weeks, she kept crackers in her backpack. I stopped removing them. Dr. Mercer said safety had to become something Ellis felt, not something I forced her to believe. Sometimes, when we got into the car, she would pause with one foot on the running board and ask, "Is there room for me?" Every time I answered the same way. There is always room for you. At first, she needed every light on to sleep, then only the hallway light, then the lamp near the stairs. Her drawings changed slowly, too. The houses were still bright, but not blinding. One day, she drew a front door open, with a small figure standing outside holding a flashlight. Another figure waited inside. "That's Grandma Evelyn," she told Dr. Mercer. I cried in the car after that session, quietly, where Ellis could not see. Pastor Tom Avery called once more in late fall. He asked carefully whether I believed reconciliation might ever be possible. I thought about my mother's texts, my father's thumbs up, Nerissa's post, Brett's smirk hidden inside a hashtag. I thought about Ellis behind the sofa. "I don't know what forgiveness will look like someday," I said, "but forgiveness is not access." He was quiet for a moment. "That's fair," he said. No one from Hartley House had unsupervised access to Ellis again. By early winter, our evenings became small and ordinary, which was exactly what I wanted. Soup on the stove, board games with missing pieces, Callum pretending to lose at checkers, Evelyn reading on the couch with her glasses low on her nose, Ellis drawing at the kitchen table as the world outside turned cold and blue. One night, Evelyn read 2 chapters of Ellis's book before bed. Not 1, 2, because promises matter more when a child has learned adults can break them. Afterward, Ellis padded into the hallway in her socks. The little nightlight glowed near the baseboard. For months, she had guarded that light like it was a lock on a door. That night, she looked at me, then reached down and switched it off. The hallway did not go dark, not completely. A soft line of light came from the bedroom behind us, another from the kitchen downstairs. But still, she had chosen to turn one off. Then she looked up. "You'll still find me, right?" I knelt in front of her and took both of her hands. "Always, but you won't have to wait in the dark again." She leaned into me, warm and solid and here. Later, after she fell asleep, I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. Evelyn sat in the chair near the window, the book closed in her lap. Callum came up behind me and rested his hand against my back. I thought winning would feel louder. It did not. It felt like a sleeping child, a quiet hallway, a grandmother who finally stopped protecting the wrong people, a house emptied of lies, a phone that could ring without making my hands shake. Vivian still believed I betrayed her. Nerissa still believed I had ruined the family. Graham still said very little. Brett still blamed everyone but himself. But I no longer needed the Hartleys to call it justice for it to be justice. They lost Hartley House because they proved they did not understand what a home was. I did not get revenge by destroying them. I got it by ending the cycle before it could swallow my daughter whole. And if your own parents left your 6-year-old alone so they could take someone else's children on vacation, would you ever forgive them, or would you do exactly what I did? Was Evelyn wrong to change the trust, or was she the only one brave enough to protect the child everyone else treated like extra luggage? Tell me what you would have done.
because sometimes the hardest part of choosing safety is realizing how many people will call it betrayal.